The silence that followed Maya's exit stretched like taffy, thick and uncomfortable, filling every corner of the dining room where three people sat frozen around a table still laden with Sunday dinner. The roast beef had gone cold, congealing in its own juices, while mashed potatoes formed a skin that nobody bothered to break. Jenna stared at the sale documents spread before her, like evidence of a crime she hadn't realized was being committed. The numbers swam on the page, $740,000 in bold print, Maya's signature neat and decisive at the bottom, the date stamp from just 4 days ago. Her fingers traced the edge of the paper, leaving slight indentations in the expensive letterhead. She can't just... Jenna's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. That house has been in our family for 60 years. Their father, David, pushed back from the table with enough force to make the water glasses tremble. His face had taken on that mottled red color that appeared whenever he felt his authority challenged. The same shade he'd turned when Maya had refused to co-sign Jenna's third business loan last year. $8 million, he muttered, pacing to the window that overlooked the backyard where Maya used to practice violin every evening after school. $8 million, and she walks out of here like we're strangers. Their mother, Linda, sat perfectly still except for her hands, which twisted her wedding ring around and around her finger in a nervous habit that had developed over 32 years of marriage. She kept opening her mouth as if to speak, then closing it again, like a fish gasping for air. The grandfather clock in the hallway, the one that had belonged to Maya's grandmother, the one Maya had specifically requested be moved to her parents' house because she couldn't bear to hear its familiar chime echoing through empty rooms, ticked away the seconds with mechanical precision. Each tick seemed to emphasize the weight of what had just happened. "We need to call her," Linda finally managed, her voice thin and reedy. "This is all a misunderstanding. Maya's always been reasonable. She's just upset because we surprised her about Jenna moving in. We should have talked to her first." Jenna's laugh was bitter, sharp-edged. "Reasonable? Mom, she sold Grandma's house without telling anyone. She's been planning this for who knows how long, just waiting for the right moment to drop the bomb." She gestured wildly at the documents. "This isn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. Look at these dates. She listed it 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks." David stopped pacing and turned to face his younger daughter. In the harsh overhead light of the dining room, the lines around his eyes seemed deeper, more pronounced. "What I want to know is when she became so selfish. We raised her better than this. Family comes first. That's what we taught both of you." "Did we, though?" The question slipped out before Jenna could stop it, and both her parents turned to stare at her. She felt heat creep up her neck, but pushed forward anyway. "I mean, when was the last time we actually treated Maya like family instead of like a resource?" Linda's ring twisting intensified. "That's not fair, Jenna. We've always loved both of you equally." "Have we?" Jenna picked up one of the sale documents, studying Maya's signature. Even her handwriting looked different somehow, more confident, more decisive than the careful script Jenna remembered from their childhood. "When's the last time we asked Maya how she was doing without immediately following it up with a request for money or a favor?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. David returned to his chair, suddenly looking older than his 58 years. "She never complained. If she was unhappy with helping out, she should have said something." "Should she have?" Jenna set down the paper and really looked at her parents for the first time in years. Not as the people who would always bail her out, not as the safety net that would always catch her when she fell, but as people who had somehow convinced themselves that taking was the same as loving. "Because I remember her saying no a few times. Remember when she wouldn't co-sign for my boutique? You both spent weeks telling her she was being selfish, that family sticks together, that she had more than she needed anyway." Linda's face crumpled slightly. "That was different. You needed help, and she was in a position to give it." "Was she?" Jenna pulled out her phone and scrolled through her text messages, finding the thread with Maya from 6 months ago. "Look at this. She asked me to pay her back some of the money I borrowed. Not all of it, just some of it. And I told her I was going through a rough patch and asked if she could wait a few more months." She held up the phone. "I never paid her back, not a cent. And you know what? She never asked again." The silence returned, heavier this time, weighted with the accumulation of years of small betrayals and large assumptions. The central air conditioning kicked on, filling the house with its mechanical hum, but somehow the sound only made the quiet between them more pronounced. David cleared his throat. The inheritance changes things. $8 million. That's enough to help everyone. She could pay off our mortgage, set up Jenna with a real business, maybe help with your mother's medical bills. Dad. Jenna's voice was quiet but firm. Listen to yourself. She just walked out of here, and you're already planning how to spend her money. Linda finally stopped twisting her ring. She's our daughter. Of course she'll want to help her family. Is she, though? Jenna asked, and the question surprised even her. I mean, when did we start thinking of Maya as our daughter versus our financial advisor, our emergency fund, our backup plan? The realization hit her like cold water. She thought about Maya's last birthday. Had anyone remembered to call her? She scrolled through her phone, looking for the date. March 15th. There were no calls logged, no texts sent. But there was a Venmo payment from Maya to Jenna for $300 on March 17th, with the note for Mom's prescription copays because Jenna had claimed she was short on cash. Maya had spent her birthday alone, then paid for their mother's medication 2 days later. Oh God, Jenna whispered, the weight of understanding settling in her chest like a stone. We've been terrible to her. Not dramatic terrible, not movie villain terrible, but just consistently, relentlessly terrible. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. David's jaw tightened. Don't be ridiculous. We're her parents. Everything we've asked of her has been reasonable. That's what family does. They help each other. When was the last time we helped her? Jenna challenged. Not accepted her help, not let her solve our problems, but actually helped her with something she needed? The question seemed to echo in the dining room. Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. David frowned, his forehead creasing as he searched his memory. She doesn't need help, he said finally. She's got her career, her condo, her savings. She's always been the responsible one. Maybe she's responsible because she had to be, Jenna said quietly. Maybe she's successful because she knew nobody else was going to take care of her. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times, its deep bronze notes rolling through the house like a funeral bell. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and the sound seemed to break the spell that had held them all frozen around the dinner table. Linda stood up abruptly, beginning to clear the dishes with sharp, aggressive movements. This is ridiculous. She's upset, that's all. She'll come around. She always does. But even as she said it, something in her voice suggested she didn't quite believe it anymore. The plates clattered against each other as she stacked them, the sound harsh and discordant in the quiet house. Jenna remained seated, staring at the sale documents. $740,000. Maya had been paying taxes and insurance on that house for 5 years, probably $20,000 or $30,000 out of her own pocket, money she'd never mentioned spending, never asked to be reimbursed for. And all this time, Jenna had been planning to just move in. Like it was her right. Like Maya's sacrifices were invisible, meaningless. The front door opened and closed, followed by footsteps in the hallway. For a moment, hope flared in Jenna's chest. Maybe Maya had come back. Maybe they could fix this. Maybe... But it was just David, returning from checking the mailbox. His face was grim as he held up an envelope addressed to Maya. Forwarded from her old apartment, he said, from some law office in Singapore. They all stared at the envelope as if it might contain either salvation or damnation. The return address was embossed in elegant script. Westfield and Associates, International Estate Planning. Should we? Linda began. No, Jenna said firmly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. It's not ours to open. It's hers. Everything is hers, and we need to stop acting like we have a right to any of it. David set the envelope on the table with careful precision. $8 million, he repeated, as if the number held some kind of magic that could undo the evening's revelations. It doesn't matter if it's 8 million or 8 cents, Jenna said, standing up from the table. It's not ours. And maybe that's exactly what Maya's been trying to tell us all along. Maya stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, watching steam from her shower slowly fog the glass. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee mug, not from nerves about the inheritance meeting, but from the adrenaline that had been coursing through her veins since she walked out of her parents' house 12 hours ago. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jenna's face when she'd opened that folder. The way her sister's confident smile had crumbled into shocked disbelief. The way their father's authoritative tone had dissolved into stammering confusion. The way their mother had reached across the table as if she could somehow undo what had already been done. Good, Maya thought, taking a sip of coffee that was still too hot. Let them sit with that feeling for a while. Let them understand what it's like when someone makes decisions about your life without asking. Her phone had been buzzing all morning. 17 missed calls from her mother. 8 from Jenna. 3 from her father. She'd turned off the notifications after the 5th voicemail that started with, "Maya, sweetie, we need to talk about this inheritance situation." The law office of Westfield and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown building that Maya had driven past 1,000 times but never entered. The lobby smelled like expensive leather and fresh flowers, white orchids arranged in crystal vases that probably cost more than most people's rent. "Ms. Chen?" The receptionist's voice was cultured, professional. "Mr. Westfield is ready for you. 32nd floor, corner office." The elevator ride felt eternal. Maya caught herself checking her reflection in the polished steel doors, adjusting her blazer, running her fingers through her hair. She'd chosen her outfit carefully this morning, the navy suit she wore to important client presentations, the one that made her feel powerful and in control. Today, she needed every ounce of confidence she could muster. Robert Westfield was not what she'd expected. Instead of the elderly, stuffy lawyer she'd imagined, he was maybe 45, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of warm smile that immediately put people at ease. His office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and walls lined with law books that actually looked read rather than decorative. "Ms. Chen, please sit." He gestured to a leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "Can I offer you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." Maya settled into the chair, noting how it seemed to envelope her in softness. Even the furniture here whispered of money and power. Westfield opened a thick manila folder, much thicker than the one she'd slid across her parents' dinner table the night before. "Before we begin, I need to verify your identity." He slid a photograph across the desk. "Is this you with Margaret Chen?" Maya's breath caught. The photo showed a younger version of herself, maybe 12 years old, standing next to an elegant Asian woman in her 60s. They were in what looked like a garden, both smiling at the camera. Maya wore a sundress she vaguely remembered, and the woman had her arm around Maya's shoulders in a gesture that seemed both protective and proud. I barely remember her," Maya admitted, touching the edge of the photograph. "This must have been taken when she visited from Singapore. I was so young." "You were 11, Westfield said gently. According to her notes, it was the only time she was able to visit the United States. She wrote extensively about that trip, about meeting you. She was quite impressed." He pulled out a leather-bound journal and opened it to a page marked with a ribbon. "May I read you something she wrote?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Westfield cleared his throat and began to read in a measured tone. "Maya is extraordinary. While her sister performed for attention and her parents fussed over trivial matters, Maya sat with me for hours asking questions about my business, about Singapore, about the world beyond their small town. She has her grandmother's intelligence and her grandfather's determination. She reminds me of myself at that age, hungry for knowledge, unafraid of hard work, but too generous for her own good. I see how they take advantage of her kindness. She gives, and they take without gratitude. One day, she will need to choose between their comfort and her own survival. When that day comes, I hope she chooses herself." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race. "She wrote that about me. After one visit?" "She wrote about you regularly over the years," Westfield said, flipping through pages covered in neat handwriting. "She followed your career, your achievements. She knew about your college graduation, your first job, your house purchase. She was incredibly proud." "But how did she know all that?" Westfield's expression grew complicated. "She hired a private investigator to keep tabs on your family." Not in an intrusive way, just periodic updates. She wanted to know how you were doing, whether her instincts about you had been correct. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of updates? The investigator documented patterns of behavior. Your family's financial difficulties, your repeated loans to them, your sister's business failures, your parents' tendency to rely on you as their safety net. He pulled out another folder, this one filled with photographs and documents. She knew about every car payment you made for Jenna, every mortgage payment you covered for your parents, every loan that was never repaid. The folder contained bank statements, photographs, even copies of text messages. Maya saw her own handwriting on checks made out to her sister, screenshots of Venmo payments to her parents, photos of her at family gatherings where she looked tired and strained while everyone else seemed carefree. This is... Maya struggled for words. This feels like stalking. I understand your concern, Westfield said carefully. But Margaret was protecting an investment. She intended to leave you everything from the moment she met you, but she needed to be certain you wouldn't simply give it all away to the same people who had been taking advantage of you for years. He pulled out a sealed envelope with Maya's name written in elegant script. She left you a letter. I think it will explain her reasoning better than I can. Maya's hands shook as she opened the envelope. The letter was written on cream-colored paper that felt expensive between her fingers. The handwriting was the same neat script she'd seen in the journal. My dear Maya, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are finally learning the truth about your inheritance. I imagine you are confused, perhaps even angry about the investigation I conducted into your life. Please understand. I did not spy on you out of cruelty, but out of love and concern. I recognized something in you during our brief meeting when you were 11. You had the spark of independence, the intelligence to build something meaningful, but also the soft heart that makes you vulnerable to those who would exploit your kindness. Your grandmother and I corresponded regularly over the years, and she often worried about how your family treated you. She saw the same patterns I did, the way they turned to you whenever they needed money, support, or rescue from their own poor decisions. The way they praised your responsibility and success while simultaneously punishing you for it by expecting you to subsidize their failures. The way they made you feel guilty for having boundaries or asking for anything in return. I built my fortune from nothing, Maya. I started with a small import business in Singapore and grew it into an international empire through hard work, smart investments, and most importantly, learning when to say no. I never married, never had children, because I poured everything into my business. But I always wondered what I might have passed on to the next generation. When I met you, I saw potential that reminded me of my younger self. But I also saw the trap you were falling into, the trap of being too generous, too responsible, too willing to sacrifice your own dreams for people who would never do the same for you. The private investigators' reports confirmed my fears. Over the past 15 years, you have given your family more than $200,000 in direct financial support. Car payments, mortgage assistance, business loans that were never repaid, emergency funds, insurance payments, even grocery money when your parents claimed to be struggling while simultaneously taking expensive vacations. You have subsidized their lifestyle while living modestly yourself. You drive a 7-year-old Honda while your sister drives a BMW you helped finance. You live in a small condo while making mortgage payments on your parents' house. You shop at discount stores while buying your family name brand everything. This ends now. My estate is worth approximately $8.2 million. This includes properties in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Vancouver, plus liquid assets and investments. But this inheritance comes with conditions, not legal ones, but moral ones that I trust you to honor. First, you will not give any portion of this inheritance to your parents or sister. Not $1, not one property, not one investment. This money is for you to build the life you deserve, not to continue subsidizing theirs. Second, you will use this opportunity to establish boundaries with your family. They have trained you to believe that love equals financial support, that being a good daughter or sister means sacrificing your own security for theirs. This is a lie they tell themselves to justify their selfishness. Third, you will invest in yourself, your education, your business ventures, your dreams. Start the consulting firm you've always talked about. Travel to the places you've only seen in magazines. Buy the house with the garden you described to me all those years ago. I know this will be difficult. They will be angry, hurt, manipulative. They will accuse you of being selfish, of abandoning family, of forgetting where you came from. They will use every weapon in their emotional arsenal to make you feel guilty for finally choosing yourself. Do not let them succeed. You are not responsible for their poor financial decisions, their failed businesses, their inability to live within their means. You are not a bank, a safety net, or a backup plan. You are a brilliant, capable woman who deserves to build wealth and security for herself. The lawyer will give you all the details about the properties and investments. Take your time learning about your options. Hire the best financial advisors money can buy. Build something lasting and beautiful. And remember, family is not just about blood. Family is about people who love you without taking from you, who celebrate your success without resenting it, who support your dreams without expecting you to fund theirs. I hope you find your true family, Maya. I believe you will. With love and faith in your future, Great Aunt Margaret Maya read the letter twice, tears streaming down her face by the end. When she looked up, Westfield was watching her with compassion. She was right about everything, Maya whispered. The amounts, the patterns, all of it. She usually was, Westfield said with a small smile. Margaret was one of the shrewdest businesswomen I ever knew. She didn't make emotional decisions. She made strategic ones based on careful observation and analysis. He slid another document across the desk. This is a summary of your inheritance. Properties, investments, liquid assets. Margaret's accountants have prepared everything for a smooth transition. Maya scanned the numbers, her eyes widening with each line item. Singapore penthouse worth $2.1 million. Vancouver commercial property generating $300,000 annual rental income. Investment portfolio worth $4.8 million. Business assets worth another $1.3 million. This is real? She asked, her voice barely audible. Very real. And as of this morning, it's all yours. Maya's phone buzzed with another call from her mother. She looked at the screen, then at Westfield, then back at the inheritance documents. For the first time in her adult life, she had the power to say no and make it stick. She declined the call. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the steering wheel, the manila envelope from Robert Westfield's office sitting like a loaded weapon on her passenger seat. The meeting had lasted 3 hours, and her entire understanding of her family had been systematically demolished, brick by brick, lie by lie. $8.7 million. 3 properties spanning Singapore, Vancouver, and surprisingly, a penthouse in downtown Seattle that she'd driven past countless times without knowing her great-aunt owned it. But the money wasn't what had left her feeling like she'd been hit by a freight train. It was the letters. 43 handwritten letters from great-aunt Margaret to grandmother, spanning 15 years. Letters that grandmother had apparently saved and left with Margaret's attorney, with specific instructions to give them to Maya when the time was right. Letters that revealed a family history Maya had never known existed. Letters that explained exactly why her parents had always treated her differently. Maya pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop 3 blocks from her parents' house and opened the envelope again. Her hands still shook as she reread the letter dated just 2 years ago. Dear Lynn, I know you worry about Maya carrying the burden alone. She reminds me so much of you at that age. Always giving, always responsible, always putting family first even when family doesn't deserve it. But I also see her father in her, and that worries me. Not David. I mean her real father. The strength, the independence, the way she tilts her head when she's thinking. She has his eyes, Lynn. Those dark, serious eyes that see right through people's nonsense. I know you've never told her the truth about David not being her biological father, and I've respected that choice for 28 years. But she deserves to know why she's different from Jenna, why she's always felt like an outsider in her own family. She deserves to know that the man who gave her half her DNA was brilliant, successful, and chose to walk away not because he didn't love her, but because he loved you enough to let you build the life you wanted with David. I'm leaving everything to Maya not just because she cared for you, but because she's the only one in that family who inherited the backbone to handle it responsibly. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Sweetie, we need to talk. Can you come over? We're all here waiting. All here. That meant Jenna had called in reinforcements. Probably Uncle Rick and Aunt Carol, maybe even Cousin Tom who worked in finance and would be very interested in Maya's sudden windfall. Maya typed back, "On my way." She drove to her childhood home in a strange state of calm. The fury from last night had crystallized into something harder, clearer. She parked behind 3 cars she recognized. Yep, the whole cavalry was here. Through the living room window, she could see them arranged like a tribunal. Her parents on the couch, Jenna in Dad's recliner, Uncle Rick pacing, Aunt Carol perched on the ottoman. Maya gathered the letters, the inheritance documents, and one more folder she'd stopped at her condo to retrieve. Time to burn it all down. She didn't knock. It was still her childhood home, after all. "Maya!" Her mother jumped up immediately. "Honey, sit down. We've all been talking and we think there might have been some miscommunication last night." "Have you now?" Maya remained standing, setting her folders on the coffee table. "What kind of miscommunication?" Uncle Rick cleared his throat. "Well, kiddo, your mom filled us in on this inheritance situation. That's wonderful news for the whole family. We're all so proud of you." "Proud of me for what exactly? Existing while my great-aunt died?" Jenna shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Maya, I know you're upset about the house thing, but I've been thinking. Maybe we can work something out. I could pay you rent or—" "The house sold, Jenna. I told you that last night. The new owners are a lovely retired couple from Portland. They're planning to turn Grandma's sewing room into an art studio." Her father leaned forward. "Maya, let's talk about the real issue here. This inheritance, it's a blessing for our whole family. Your great-aunt would have wanted— Do you want to know what great-aunt Margaret wanted, Dad?" Maya opened the first folder and pulled out the letters. "Because she left very detailed instructions." The room went quiet. Maya could hear the old grandfather clock ticking, the same clock that had marked time during countless family dinners, holiday gatherings, birthday parties where she'd always felt slightly apart from everyone else. Now she knew why. "She left me letters, 43 of them, written to Grandma over 15 years. Want to hear what they say about what she wanted?" "Maya," her mother's voice was tight with warning. "Some things are private." "Private?" Maya laughed, and it didn't sound like her usual laugh. "You know what's interesting about privacy, Mom? It's usually used to protect lies." She pulled out the letter dated 3 years ago and began reading. "Lynn, I watched David's family at Jenna's engagement party last weekend. They fawned over her like she was spun gold, while Maya sat in the corner helping your mother with her medication. It broke my heart. Maya has given that family everything, her time, her money, her energy, and they treat her like the help. She deserves better than being their ATM and caretaker." "Maya, stop!" Her father's voice was sharp now. "Oh, we're just getting started, Dad. Or should I say, David?" She looked directly at him, and something in her eyes made him sink back into the couch cushions. "Because here's where it gets really interesting." Maya pulled out the letter from 2 years ago. "This one's my personal favorite." She read the paragraph about her real father aloud, watching her mother's face drain of color with each word. When she finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Jenna was the first to speak. What does that mean?" "It means," Maya said calmly, "that David isn't my biological father." "Which explains a lot, actually. Like why I've never felt like I belonged in this family. Why you all treat me differently. Why I'm the responsible one who pays for everyone else's mistakes while being treated like an outsider." Her mother was crying now. "Maya, please, it wasn't supposed to matter. David raised you. He loves you." Maya looked at the man she'd called Dad for 28 years. His face was gray, and he wouldn't meet her eyes. "Do you, David? Love me?" she asked quietly. "Of course I do. You're my daughter." "Am I? Because you've spent my entire life making me feel like a stranger in my own family. Like I owed you something for the privilege of existing in your house." Uncle Rick tried to intervene. "Maya, honey, this is a lot to process. Maybe we should all take a step back and—" "No." Maya's voice cut through the room like a blade. "We're not taking a step back. We're moving forward. Because Great-Aunt Margaret left very specific instructions about how her estate should be handled." She opened the second folder. "She established a trust. The income from her investments, about $40,000 a month, goes to me. But the principal? She left instructions for me to distribute it as I see fit to family members who have shown genuine love and support. Every person in the room perked up. Maya could practically see dollar signs in their eyes. Now, let's talk about who's shown me genuine love and support over the years. Maya pulled out a notebook. I've been keeping track, actually. Jenna, you've borrowed a total of $37,000 from me over the past 5 years. Paid back, $0. But you did buy yourself a new car last month. That was nice. Jenna's face flushed red. I was going to pay you back when what? When your next business failed? When your next engagement fell through? Maya flipped a page. Mom, Dad, sorry, David. I've covered your mortgage payment 4 times, paid for Mom's dental work twice, and bought your groceries more times than I can count. But when I graduated with my MBA, you missed the ceremony because Jenna had a crisis that turned out to be her wanting to return a dress. That's not fair, her mother whispered. Fair? Maya laughed again, and this time it was sharp enough to cut glass. Let's talk about fair. When I was in the hospital with appendicitis 2 years ago, how many of you visited? Anyone remember? The silence stretched on. I'll give you a hint. It was the same number of people who helped me move into my condo, the same number who called when I got my promotion, the same number who remembered my birthday last year without Facebook reminding them. She closed the notebook. 0. The answer is 0. Aunt Carol finally spoke up. Maya, we're family. Family forgives. You're right. Family does forgive. Maya stood up, gathering her papers. Which is why I'm not going to sue Jenna for the money she owes me. And I'm not going to report David for claiming me as a dependent on his taxes while I was paying my own rent in college. Her father's head snapped up. How did you? Great Aunt Margaret was very thorough in her research before deciding who should inherit her fortune. Turns out she hired a private investigator to look into our family dynamics. Amazing what public records can tell you about a family's financial arrangements. Maya pulled out one final document. But here's the thing about forgiveness. It doesn't mean I have to keep enabling the same behavior. So I've made my decision about the inheritance distribution. She placed a single check on the coffee table. Everyone leaned forward to see it. $500 to Grandma's church, in memory of the woman who actually loved me unconditionally. Maya looked around the room. That's it. That's the distribution. Maya, you can't be serious, Uncle Rick sputtered. We're your family. No, Maya said quietly. You're David's family. You made that very clear over the past 28 years. I was just the obligation you tolerated because Mom felt guilty. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Jenna? Since you're so concerned about having a place to live, I have a suggestion. Great Aunt Margaret's penthouse downtown has been sitting empty. The trust is selling it next month. I'm sure the new owners would be happy to discuss rental terms with someone who has excellent credit and references. Jenna's face went white. Maya, please. I can't afford downtown rent. Then I guess you'll have to figure something out. You know, like I've been doing my entire adult life. Maya opened the door. It's amazing how resourceful you can be when no one's enabling your poor choices. Her mother called out desperately, Maya, wait, we can talk about this. We can work things out. Maya turned back one last time. Mom, I spent 28 years trying to earn a place in this family. I'm done auditioning. I'm done being the bank, the babysitter, the cleanup crew for everyone else's messes. I'm done pretending that blood makes you family when you've never treated me like I belonged. She looked at each of them one final time. Great Aunt Margaret was right about one thing. I did inherit a backbone. Just took me a while to learn how to use it. Maya walked out of her childhood home and closed the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like freedom. The morning air in downtown Seattle carried the scent of rain and fresh coffee as Maya walked toward the towering glass building that housed Westfield and Associates. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement in a steady rhythm that somehow calmed her racing thoughts. She'd barely slept, replaying the dinner conversation and that unexpected phone call over and over in her mind. The lobby was all marble and understated elegance, the kind of place that whispered old money and serious business. Maya gave her name to the receptionist, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes who smiled warmly and directed her to the 42nd floor. Robert Westfield turned out to be nothing like Maya had imagined. Instead of the elderly, stern-faced lawyer she'd pictured, he was perhaps 50, with laugh lines around his eyes and a genuine handshake that put her at ease immediately. "Ms. Chen, thank you for coming so promptly," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his mahogany desk. "I know this must all seem very sudden and perhaps overwhelming." Maya settled into the leather chair, her purse clutched in her lap. "I have to admit, I'm confused. I barely remember my great-aunt Margaret. I think I met her maybe twice when I was very young." Mr. Westfield nodded, opening a thick file. "That's not uncommon. Margaret Chen Lim was, let's say she was a very private person. She spent most of her adult life in Singapore, building quite an impressive business empire. Import-export primarily, but she diversified into real estate and technology investments over the decades." He pulled out a photograph and slid it across the desk. Maya's breath caught. The woman in the picture looked remarkably like her grandmother, but with sharper features and eyes that held a steely determination Maya recognized in her own mirror. She never married, never had children, but she kept track of her family from afar. She knew about your grandmother's death, about the house, about your career success. Mr. Westfield's voice grew warmer. She also knew about your family dynamics. Maya's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Your great-aunt was quite thorough in her research. She hired investigators to keep tabs on the family. She knew about your financial support of your parents and sister, about how they took your generosity for granted." He paused, studying Maya's face. "She saw herself in you, I think. The responsible one who always puts family first, sometimes to their own detriment." The office felt suddenly smaller, the weight of this revelation pressing down on Maya's shoulders. "She was watching us?" "Not in a creepy way," Mr. Westfield assured her quickly. "More like, she cared from a distance. She wanted to make sure that when the time came, her legacy went to someone who would use it wisely. Someone who understood the value of hard work and wouldn't squander it." He opened another folder, this one containing official-looking documents with impressive seals. The estate includes 3 properties: a penthouse in Singapore worth approximately $2.8 million, a vineyard in Tuscany valued at $1.6 million, and a beach house in Malibu worth $3.2 million. There are also stock portfolios, bonds, and cash assets totaling just over $4 million. Maya felt dizzy. The numbers seemed surreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. That's over $11 million. $11.6 million to be precise, Mr. Westfield confirmed. "All of it yours, with one condition." Of course there was a condition. Maya had learned long ago that nothing in life came without strings attached. What kind of condition? "You have to promise to live for yourself first, to stop being everyone else's financial safety net unless you genuinely want to help, not because you feel obligated." His smile was gentle but serious. "Your great-aunt was very specific about this. She said she'd watched too many generous people get taken advantage of by family members who confused love with entitlement." Maya's phone buzzed in her purse. Then again. And again. She pulled it out to see a string of missed calls and texts from her parents and Jenna. The messages ranged from apologetic to demanding to downright manipulative. "Sweetie, we need to talk about last night. Family is forever." "Mom, Maya, don't be selfish. Think about what Grandma would have wanted." "Dad, I already put a deposit down on the movers. You can't just leave me hanging like this." Jenna Maya showed the messages to Mr. Westfield, who read them with a knowing expression. "This is exactly what your great-aunt was talking about. They're not reaching out because they're concerned about you or want to apologize. They're reaching out because they want something." The truth of it hit Maya like a physical blow. Even now, even after last night's confrontation, they were still trying to manipulate her, still treating her like their personal bank account instead of a human being with her own needs and boundaries. "There's something else," Mr. Westfield said, pulling out a sealed envelope. "Your great-aunt left this letter for you. She wrote it 6 months before she passed away." Maya's hands trembled as she opened the envelope and unfolded the elegant stationery inside. The handwriting was precise, confident. "My dear Maya, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you're about to inherit more money than you probably ever imagined having. I want you to know that this decision wasn't made lightly. I spent 60 years building this wealth, and I could have left it to charity or distant relatives who barely knew my name. But I chose you because I see something in you that reminds me of myself at your age, a good heart that others have learned to exploit. I made many mistakes in my life, but the biggest was thinking that giving everything to family was the same as loving them. It isn't. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. Your sister has never learned to stand on her own because you've always been there to catch her when she falls. Your parents have never had to truly budget or sacrifice because they know you'll step in when things get tight. They've confused your kindness for weakness, and in doing so, they've robbed you of the family relationships you deserved. This money comes with a responsibility, not to them, but to yourself. Use it to build the life you want, not the life others expect you to fund. Travel, take risks, maybe even start that nonprofit you dreamed about in college. But most importantly, learn to say no without feeling guilty about it. You are not responsible for fixing everyone else's problems. You never were. With love and hope for your future, Great Aunt Margaret Maya's vision blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks. This woman she barely remembered had seen her more clearly than her own parents did, had understood the weight Maya carried and the toll it took on her spirit. Her phone rang again. This time it was her mother, and Maya found herself answering without thinking. Maya, thank goodness. Listen, about last night. Mom, I can't talk right now. I'm in a meeting. A meeting about the inheritance? Sweetie, we need to discuss this as a family. This is a blessing for all of us. The automatic response rose to Maya's lips. The apology, the explanation, the gentle backing down she'd perfected over the years. But Great Aunt Margaret's words echoed in her mind. You are not responsible for fixing everyone else's problems. No, Mom. This is a blessing for me, just me, and I'm going to honor that. Maya Elizabeth Chen, don't you dare. Maya hung up and turned off her phone. Mr. Westfield had been pretending to review documents, giving her privacy, but now he looked up with approval. That sounded like progress. It felt terrifying, Maya admitted, wiping her cheeks. But also, liberating. Your great aunt would be proud. He gathered the papers into neat stacks. Now, we have some practical matters to discuss. The properties will need to be inspected and decisions made about whether to keep or sell them. The financial assets need to be transferred to accounts in your name. And there are some tax implications we'll need to navigate. Over the next 2 hours, Maya signed more documents than she'd ever seen in her life. Each signature felt like a small act of rebellion against the version of herself who always put everyone else first. When they finished, Mr. Westfield walked her to the elevator. One more thing, he said, handing her a small velvet box. This was your great aunt's. She wanted you to have it. Inside was a simple gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a key. Maya fastened it around her neck, feeling its weight settle against her collarbone like a promise. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into a new life. When the doors opened onto the lobby, Maya stepped out as a different person than the one who'd entered that morning. She was still Maya Chen, still the responsible older sister and dutiful daughter. But now she was also the inheritor of $11.6 million and the wisdom of a great aunt who'd learned to choose herself. Her phone, when she finally turned it back on, showed 47 missed calls and 63 text messages. Maya scrolled through them with detached interest, watching her family's panic escalate with each unanswered attempt at contact. The messages evolved from demanding to pleading, to angry, to desperate, and back to pleading again. But mixed in among her family's increasingly frantic communications was a text from her college roommate Sarah. Coffee this weekend? I have news about the nonprofit I'm starting for financial literacy education. Could use someone with your business background. Maya smiled, typing back, Coffee sounds perfect, and I might have some ideas about funding. As she walked back to her car, Maya felt the key pendant swing gently against her chest with each step. The weight of obligation that had pressed down on her shoulders for so many years was finally lifting, replaced by something she'd almost forgotten existed. Possibility. The future stretched out before her, vast and uncharted and entirely her own. For the first time in her adult life, Maya Chen was free to discover who she might become when she wasn't too busy saving everyone else.